Welcome to Biology 110 Life Science. In this video, I will cover the information in the course syllabus. This will provide information on how to navigate the course and probably answer many of the questions you may have about this class. So first of all, this is somewhat generic. The semester will be filled in on the actual syllabus that you will see on Canvas, and the dates of the semester will be filled in. This video is for an 8-week course. It should be noted that an 8-week course covers the same content as a 16-week course, but just at a faster pace. You've chosen to take this course in an online anytime format. What that means is we will not meet in person, and you will complete the lecture and the lab components at home. Be sure to buy the lab kit from the ICC bookstore, and it will contain the lab manual and all the supplies that you need to perform the lab. Since this is an anytime course, what that means is you still have required due dates, we just don't meet in person. So Biology 110 is a biology class that's going to cover a lot of different aspects, from the cell to genetics to evolution, animals, plants, ecology, etc. And I'm Professor Good, and here is my contact information. My email address is agood@icc.edu. This is my preferred method of contact, and my preferred method to how to address me in an email is Professor or Mrs. Good. I will respond to your emails within 24 hours, Monday through Friday, and 48 hours on a weekend or holiday. Please note what is called email etiquette. This is how to properly send an email. You must use your ICC email address, not your personal email address. Include your name, first and last, the course that you're taking. So in this case, you could say Biology 110. Please don't just say biology. I teach 3 or 4 different biology courses, so that doesn't narrow it down. And proper grammar. This is a professional academic setting, so you want to make sure you're not using texting modes, etc. And then whatever question you have. The more information you provide in your email, the sooner I can get back to you and answer your question promptly. My phone is there, and I do have voicemail. If you're taking this course in the summer, I am not on campus. So if you leave a voicemail, I won't get it. The best way to get a hold of me is through my email. My office is 321E on the East Peoria campus, and if you would like to make an appointment to meet in person, this is the location it would be. If you're taking this course during a summer session, I will have virtual office hours via Zoom. Please email me for the Zoom link. If you're taking this course during a fall or spring semester, then I will have office hours on campus that will be listed there. Here is the course description. Please make sure you read over this and the prerequisites for the course. So what you're going to notice is I'm not going to read every single word. I'm going to do what I call hit the highlights to give you the most information and the things I think are the most important. So the next thing to note is what you will need to be successful for the course. You automatically have the textbook or the ebook incorporated into our Canvas site. Canvas, if you're not familiar, is what's called the LMS or Learning Management System that we will use for all the course correspondent assignments, grades, etc. So there will be a little tab over on the left, which I'll show you in a separate video, on the Canvas site that says McGraw-Hill Connect or McGraw-Hill Integration. And you would click on this to access the ebook. You can also access the ebook by clicking on an assignment within Canvas that's a McGraw-Hill assignment. McGraw-Hill is just the publisher of your textbook. Along with your textbook comes what is called Connect. Connect is the textbook or publisher website that will have all of your assignments with the exception of the lab assignments. And again, in a separate video, I'll go through all of this. The costs for the textbook and Connect are already incorporated into your ICC student account or student bill. So therefore, you do not need to purchase these separately through the ICC bookstore. I highly recommend that you use what comes with this. I mean, you don't have to do anything. So if you don't do anything, you have all the materials that you need. So if you click on that McGraw-Hill Connect integration, you'll have the ebook, Connect, and something called Proctorio, which is the proctoring software. You do have the option to opt out. However, if you opt out, you still need all the materials that you will have to purchase elsewhere at a higher price. So the only thing you need to get from the ICC bookstore is the lab kit. We at ICC have built our own personal lab kits that are going to contain the materials that you need for the lab. In the lab kit, you will also find the lab manual. Since this is an online course, you will obviously need a computer, either a desktop or laptop, with reliable internet, a web camera with working audio. Tablets, Chromebooks, gaming systems, or just a phone will not be sufficient to complete all the assignments for this course. You will also need a camera to take photos for your lab assignments. A cell phone camera is sufficient. So the lecture material will be delivered via something called Nearpod. Nearpod will be integrated into Canvas, and you will just click on the link to access the Nearpod assignments. What Nearpod is, it's a website that is free, or an app that is free, that will contain basically PowerPoint notes that have been uploaded with activities, things like click and drags, or matching, videos, multiple choice questions, etc. And I have narrated each of those slides. So I created the PowerPoint slides that were uploaded into Nearpod, and then I have narrated them. I highly recommend that you listen to the narrations because this is the same as being in a face-to-face setting and having me lecture. I will provide examples, analogies, and some hints on how to best learn the material. There's also a corresponding Nearpod packet or note packet that will correspond with the Nearpod assignment. So in other words, as you're watching the Nearpod, you will see highlighted words, and that's the words you're going to fill in the Nearpod notes. These are the notes that you're going to use to study for the quests in the final exam. So how to learn the lab material. This is usually the part that you struggle with the most for the first week or so. So you're going to purchase that lab kit from the ICC bookstore. Inside it, you're going to find the lab manual, and you're going to start reading the introductory information. And so you're also going to make sure that you have all the materials that you need to complete the lab. So most of the labs, all the stuff is in the lab kit. However, labs 2 and 3 require additional items. They're food items, things like a banana or some vegetable oil, an egg, that we can't put in the lab kit because they would spoil. So you'll just need a few things. So I always recommend that you read the lab a week or so ahead of time so that you make sure you have all the items that you need to be successful. Really, it's just those first labs 2 and 3 that you're going to need additional things, but just so you're prepared. Also, it's important to read the announcements on Canvas because it'll provide some tips for the labs. And I also have lab tip videos in each Canvas module that will help you kind of navigate many of the questions that you typically have. Just to note, you're going to need the lab kit starting for lab 1 to take inventory to make sure everything is present. And once the lab kit is opened, it cannot be returned to the bookstore. So make sure that you're committed to taking the course before you open the lab kit. So the variety of different types of assignments. There are what are called unit quests, which I'll explain, lab quizzes, lab photos, there's one discussion, and there's a survey at the end of the semester. Also, all the information that you're going to need is going to be located on Canvas. So within a Canvas module, you'll have all the resources that you need and all the assignments that you need. I will also send out announcements for every single module that will provide tips, a little introduction, and kind of your to-do list for the week. So I highly recommend that within your Canvas settings, you make it so that the announcements are emailed to you so you can see those. You can see them on Canvas also, but it's nice to get an email and then check your email often. So this is a list of all the things that we're going to look at this semester, course level outcomes, and you can look at those. I want to go to grades because that's really what you care more about. So there's about 880 points. That sometimes fluctuates a little bit here or there, but for the most part, about 880 points in the course. And they're going to come from all of the assignments, Nearpods, SmartBooks, which I'm going to go through each of those individually on the next page. So the course is not weighted any differently. So in other words, it's all the points divided by the total points. So whatever points you get divided by the total points possible, that is your grade in the course. A couple of things to note. There are a few types of assignments, Nearpod being one and the lab photos being one, that I have to manually grade. And I will always put comments in the little comment section. So I recommend that on Canvas, you go look at those little comments. It shows up as like a little conversation box because I will often put the right answer if you had incorrect answers, or if you're doing something incorrectly, for example, submitting the photos wrong, I will put what you did wrong. So that way you can correct yourself so that you don't do the same mistake on the next assignment. Grading policies, late work is not accepted. You do have something called tickets, which we'll talk about. So you have a couple of things that will help you if you forget to do something or life just goes sideways. All grades are final. So after the last day of the course, I don't accept any additional work. Like, no, you can't do any additional study or extra credit to bring your grade up, etc. It's just a straight grading scale of 10 points, and I will grade at 0.5 or higher. So if you get an 89.5, awesome, you got an A, and an 89.4, still great, is a B. So this is the list. This is probably one of the most important pages of all the different types of assignments that you're going to have this semester. Now let's look at the detail of all of the lecture assignments. They're going to always be due at 11:59, and Nearpod's SmartBooks are going to be due on Wednesdays and Sundays. Nearpods are the primary source of the lecture material that I have created. This is what you're going to study before you take a quest. They are 5 points, untimed, and you have unlimited attempts before the due date. They are graded for completion and accuracy. So you've got to answer all the questions, including the embedded videos, and get the answers correct. For each incorrect answer, it is minus 0.1 or a tenth. These require me to grade them, so they will be graded within 1 week of a submission. Typically faster than that, but depending on how many students I have in a given semester, it could take up to a week. SmartBook assignments are also due on Wednesdays and Sundays, and these are going to be found in Connect. They are what we call an adaptive assignment in that it changes based on how many questions you get correct. The more you get correct, the shorter the stack gets. The more you get incorrect, the more questions they're going to ask you. They are 3 points, untimed, unlimited attempts before the due date. You can also use these as what we call a recharge feature after it's been completed to go back and use these for study aids. I also recommend that you go back and use the Nearpods as a study source. The SmartBooks are auto-graded, meaning the computer automatically grades them, and as soon as you submit them, your grade will be available on Canvas. So instead of taking large unit exams, you will be taking what are called quests. Quests are a combination of a quiz and a test. So they're larger than a quiz, but smaller than a unit exam. They're going to be due on Tuesdays at 11:59, but they'll open on Thursdays. For all of your assignments, I highly recommend that you work ahead. Now, I don't mean work ahead like the whole semester, but things are going to be open for 1 to 2 weeks ahead of time. So if you know that you're going to be working a bunch of hours or you're going to be away on vacation, you can always work a little bit ahead. So quests are going to open the Thursday before the due date, and there will be a quest after each unit. So the units are typically 1 to 2 chapters. It varies a little bit, but about 1 to 2 chapters. They are proctored, so no resources are allowed except for your brain. 50 points, 50 questions, and timed 60 minutes. You have 1 attempt. You cannot start and stop. In other words, once you start it, you have to complete it, and there are no retakes. These are also automatically graded, and the grades are available as soon as you submit the quest. You can see your detailed answers, in other words, what you missed, 1 hour after the due date. So for example, if you took it on a Tuesday at 10 a.m., you still wouldn't be able to see it until Wednesday morning at, 12:01. I do highly recommend that you go back and see what you missed because there's a comprehensive final at the end of the semester, and I use those same question pools, so you don't want to miss the same question twice. Lab is obviously a portion of this course, so lab quizzes are also due on Wednesdays and Sundays. They are a proctored quiz over the lab material only, just the lab. And the quests are over just the lecture material, no lab material. However, there's a lot of times the information will overlap, so that's possible you can see some overlapping. No resources are allowed for quizzes except for your brain. You are going to have 10 questions, 10 points, timed 10 minutes, and you again have 1 attempt and no retakes. They're also auto-graded, and your grade will be available as soon as you submit it. Just like with the quest, you'll be able to see your results 1 hour after the due date. I will drop the one lowest quiz score, so I will take the best, 13 out of 14. If you don't submit your lab photos, which are required for attendance and the lab portion of the course, then the lab quiz score becomes a 0. So even if you got a 9 out of 10, let's say on quiz 2, if you didn't submit your lab photos for lab 2, that score would be changed to a 0. So make sure you're submitting your lab photos. The comprehensive final is at the end of the semester and is a proctored exam. This is the only big exam over all the units for lecture, so all lecture material. It is 150 points, 125 questions. So 100 of those questions are over units 1 through 7, and then 25 questions over unit 8. Because that one we don't have time to squeeze a quest in. It's timed 120 minutes, 1 attempt, no starting or stopping, no retakes, and no tickets. It is also auto-graded. I do allow on the comprehensive final 1 piece of paper front and back, 8.5 by 11, handwritten or typed, and you can type or write whatever you want for just the final exam. All quests and final exam grades are graded, meaning I don't drop any of those scores. So I understand that sometimes life happens, that you forget things, maybe you had to work extra, or you have a sick kid at home, or you're ill. So I provide what are called tickets. Tickets are going to allow you an extension on assignments. So you get 1 ticket per type of assignment, which is listed here. So let's say that you need extra time for one of your quests, so quest 2. You're going to email me, Professor Good, this is, whatever your name is, in Biology 110, I would like to use my ticket for quest 2. I'll reply back, thank you for the email, and you have an extension for 1 week. So if it was due, let's say June 1st, then now it's going to be June the 8th. So you have 1 week to use those tickets. After that, if you didn't use your ticket, then it will become a 0. And you have to email me to redeem the ticket. So lab, as I've mentioned, is also part of this course. I've mentioned the lab kit, and inside it is the lab manual. That is going to contain all the information that you need to perform the lab and the information to complete the lab. So in order for me to know that you're actually doing the lab activities, you're going to submit what are called lab photos. So if you were taking this course in person, you would be going to lecture for 3 hours a week and lab for 2 hours a week. And some labs will take you more or less time, just kind of depending on what the activity is. But it's important that you are performing your own experiments and submitting your own work. So even if you've got a relative or a friend that's taking this course, each of you is going to do your own work and submit your own lab photos. If you're submitting the same exact photos, then you're both going to receive zeros for those assignments, and that's considered academic misconduct or cheating. So lab photos are also due on Wednesdays and Sundays, and this is part of your attendance that you're doing the lab. So in a separate video, I'll explain the lab manual in detail. So this is just kind of the highlights. So each lab will have 4 photos that will be submitted. These I have to grade manually. You're going to upload them to Canvas, and I will put comments just like I did for the Nearpod as far as, if there's anything incorrect or if you forgot a photo or whatever you're doing. So make sure you read those comments so that you're doing things correctly. You get 2 extensions. These are separate from tickets of lab photos. So you get 2 lab photos in addition to your other tickets. So as I mentioned before, if you need to redeem a ticket, you're going to email me and you get a 1-week extension. As previously mentioned, if you don't submit the lab photos, then the quiz scores are going to be a 0. So make sure you're doing that for every single lab. So each lab will have different components. So some you're going to, do an experiment. Other ones you're going to cut out these Mr. Potato Heads. Other ones you will collect some data. So it just kind of depends on what the lab is. So make sure you have all the required components. Make sure everything that you're submitting is on Canvas. It's legible. I can read it. It's not a backwards image. And you will be required to upload what we call selfies. So a selfie doesn't mean that you have to take your picture yourself. It just means I need a picture of you with all the required parts. So I have to see your entire face and all the parts. So you can have somebody else take your photo if that's easier, which is totally fine. Since each lab requires 4 photos, I only want 1 file. So you're just going to upload 1 PDF. That's the easiest way for Canvas to read it, so I can read it. And there's a free program called ilovepdf.com that will allow you to merge all of those photos. So that's an easy, free way to just merge them all. All right, also part of the lab are called virtual labs. So these are kind of going to get you ready for the actual lab activity that you're going to do. They're due Wednesdays and Sundays, and they're 3 points, untimed, unlimited attempts, auto-graded, and you are allowed 1 ticket. These are separate from the lab photos. So this is not the lab. This is another assignment. Attendance is mandatory. I take attendance by seeing that you're turning in assignments, that you've turned in your lab photos, etc. The rest of this page, which I'm not going to read all the words, basically goes through what happens if you're a never attender or a non-attender. It's going to, if you're a never attender, then you're not listening to this. In other words, you're attending by doing this video and answering the Nearpod questions. A non-attender is someone who stops participating and doesn't contact me. Here are some drop dates. Again, this will change from semester to semester. So please be sure to see your syllabus for a particular semester. If there's extenuating circumstances, you could get it incomplete if you have a medical issue that arises, etc. And if there's any kind of inclement weather or things that we can't foresee, that technology goes down, we will kind of just keep on course and adjust as needed. I will always communicate with you via Canvas or email. So if there's an issue, check your email, check Canvas. And if you have an issue, just email me to let me know what's going on. So this whole page is on academic integrity, which basically says that you are committed to actively participating in the class and doing your own work, submitting your own work. So here's a list of all the things that can be considered cheating. So no AI in this course. There's very little things that you could use AI in this course because we have created this course from scratch. Proctorio is something I do want to spend a few minutes on. Proctorio is the software that's included in Connect that's going to be used for proctoring your assignments, specifically your quests and your lab quizzes. So at the beginning of each lab quiz, quest, or the final exam, It will ask you to show your ID, so that can either be your student ID or your driver's license, and it will do some pre-checks to make sure that everything is working on your end before you get started. So during any kind of proctored assignment, I have to see your entire face. So not just your forehead, not just your eyes, your entire face. And you can't talk to anybody, you can't be looking around, you can't look at your phone. If I see something that looks like you're using AI to generate the answers, then you'll get a 0 on that assignment. The first time I see it, I will send you an email that says, it looked like maybe you were looking around and using some aid or talking to someone. And we'll just kind of discuss those things via email. The second offense, then you will probably get an F in the course, and I will fill out what's called a student of concern form. So you're probably thinking that this course sounds really hard. I promise it's not. This is just a rundown of all the rules, so that way we're all on the same page. So course policies and expectations are basically things that, we've kind of discussed. So all assignments are submitted through Canvas. You have to have them by their due dates. You need to keep track of the due dates. Pretty much everything is going to keep on the same schedule: Wednesdays, Sundays, Tuesday for quests. There's no retakes. And if you have missed assignments, you can use your tickets for those within 1 week of the due date. So let me kind of go back to that. Of the assignment's original due date. So if it was due on a Wednesday and you don't tell me until 10 days later, okay, that's beyond the time frame that you could have the extension. So make sure that you use that week window that you have. Tips for success. So get all the materials, have a reliable internet, have a reliable computer, make sure you're checking your email often. You must use your ICC email. Familiarize yourself with the Connect and Canvas sites. So Canvas is where you're going to see your things, and then you'll click on the Connect. Get a calendar to put down all the dates. Start early. So if you're like, I started my assignment at 11:30 and my internet went out. So first of all, depending on the assignment, it may take you more than 25 minutes, 29 minutes to take it. So make sure you start early. That will relieve a lot of your stress and anxiety. If you know people in the class, make some study groups. Communicate with me if you're struggling so I can help get you back on track. Listen to those Nearpods and complete the corresponding Nearpod notes. That is your notes for the course. Don't just fly through those Nearpods as fast as you can and answer the activity questions to get your points. The listening part is going to help you, I promise. There's study guides. Those are going to be helpful. You cannot use them during the quests or the quizzes, but you can use them to study before you take them. I also have practice Kahoots that will help you for those. There are some extra credit opportunities. Use them. Try to schedule time for this class in a quiet, distraction-free environment. Be motivated and stay organized. So you should be ready to get going on your orientation assignments in the orientation module. If you experience any technical hiccups, here are all the tips and tricks that I have. This is it, my friends. So this is the list that I will send you. I am a biologist. I am not technological savvy, so to speak. So these are all the things that I recommend that you do. I would use Edge or Google Chrome as your browser. That's usually the first thing that's kind of a glitch that you have. And make sure that you follow all these things before you email me. Sometimes just restarting your computer and making sure you're logged out of any other accounts will fix your problem. ICC resources. So we have free tutoring. We have accommodations that if you have, you need a test, extra time on tests, or if you need somebody to read your test, if you go through Access Services and you qualify, they can help you with that. We have the testing center. And if you're just struggling with life in general, not even having to do with this course, we have counseling. All of these things are free. So final note, here we go. Stay organized, stay motivated, and reach out if you need assistance. The last couple pages of this, I'm not going to go through, line by line. This is the calendar. This is the schedule of how things are happening. Again, depending on the semester, the dates will change, but the typical idea is not going to change. This is also going to provide a place for you to record grades if you would like. Canvas is going to do that for you, but this is going to show you what each module is going to look like. So again, about 1 to 2 chapters, depending on the module, and then that quest pops up. And here's the amount of points for each. And if you scroll through here, you're just going to see all of the information. So I'm looking forward to a great semester. Please email them if you have questions.